Yep.
There we go.
Yep.
Hello, people. It's Composer Talk time again. And
yes,
we are
June 13th, 2018.
13th,
I don't know
yeah.
why I was saying 16th.
We're back at
Scoot
it.
back a bit. I'm like next to where I cast for my
Yeah.
game streams. It was hurting. Okay.
Here we are.
There
Okay. Yep. Slow week this week.
Very slow.
Not a whole lot going on. So
literally nothing.
Lots of fluff today. I'm just kidding. But
all terrible.
Well, I was saying fluff because we have to like fluff it up to make it look like we have more than we do. Anyway, yeah, as far as news goes this week, there's not a whole lot. Thea Musgrave, the British composer, was just awarded the Queen's Medal for Music, which is noteworthy. I am not British. I have no real investment in the monarchy, but if the Queen gave me a medal for music, I'd be super excited. But yeah, Thea Musgrave is, for those who don't know her, is a very established composer. I think she's in her 80s. Very well known. So, yeah, this comes up to us from the Sunday Post, British newspaper. So, that's something. As far as other things go, we have the SCI and ASCAP have just announced the results of their commission competition. They do this every year. It's a competition, for those who don't know, for high school, undergraduate, and graduate students in composition. The winners for the high school and undergraduate division are Matthew Scholfius for his chamber concerto, with an honorable mention to the composer Stephen Karukos for I Am Electric. The word electric is in brackets.
No, it's I Am. I think it's an electronic piece.
I think that's part of the title.
Oh, it is.
Electric
that's
and black.
silly.
Yeah, no, I don't think.
In that case, that's a silly title, Stephen. Stop that.
Maybe it's the kind of thing like people, in the old days, would call their piece like sonata for violin and piano. Maybe that's his version of violet. It's part of the title, but it also tells you.
Weird. All right.
I don't know.
So, graduate division, we have the winner Felipe Tovar Henao for Danzas and Kefelik. I can't pronounce it properly because lack of non-English.
Encephalikas, something like that. Encephalikas.
Encephalikas. I can't. I'm good at pronouncing things. I can't pronounce that. So we're going to ignore that title for now, but congratulations, Felipe. And then honorable mention to Charles Peck for vinyl. See, that's so much simpler. Why can't people? If your title isn't easily pronounceable, people aren't going to remember people.
I like that title, vinyl. It's evocative. It's simple. I don't have a problem with the Spanish title, especially. It's like it seems just because I don't pronounce it exactly correctly, but he also, he may be from a Spanish-speaking
We're
country.
so far from vinyl. I don't know. Anyway, so New Music Watch recordings. You've got something on here from Lindsay Goodman.
This album's actually a few weeks old, but we don't really have much this week. So I just wanted to bring it up because it's been getting a good bit of press, been featured at iCure if you listen, and it's also featured on the Karma Records Bandcamp page. There's only 3 of the records there that are actually featured on that page for some reason. I'm not sure, but it's a record by Lindsay Goodman, a flutist. It's called Returning to Heights Unseen, and on here there's music for solo flute, flute duet, and flute and electronics.
I like electronics.
Both.
Did you say electronics?
Electronics.
Electronics.
I did say electronics.
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm trying to sing or something, and then modifying the electronic. That's probably where I get it.
No, and if anybody does that when singing it, they're wrong. Smack them.
Well, not necessarily, because sometimes you do have to modify the vowel, especially if the first syllable of that word came on like a downbeat. You might say electronic instead of electronic, because that would sound a little silly.
I don't care. I'm a truist. I'd rather things be correct.
I tend to think like sing it like you say it. Like, it irritates me when people sing angel, for example. But there are a few things that I don't mind. It's a matter of preference at this point. We won't dispute it further. Tell us what you think. Would you rather have it sung electronic or electronic? Anyway, um, but yeah,
Either way, you were wrong for speaking it that way.
both there's pieces for flute and fixed media, pieces for flute and live electronics.
Yeah.
And it includes works by composers Roger Dannenberg, David Stock, Tony Zielinski, Elaine Lilios, Linda
Ooh.
Kernohan, Randall Wolf, Roger Zahab, and Judith Chatin.
Lilios, I've heard the name.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where, but it definitely rung a bell. I need to look
And
at that.
and I've listened. I haven't gotten through this whole thing yet. I listened to it. There's some interesting stuff on there. I particularly enjoyed the David Stock piece, which I think is called "Wedding Prayer." I thought it was very beautiful. But yeah, check this album out. There's some interesting stuff on there. It's available at Bandcamp for both to buy the digital album.
The wolf piece. The line of purples for flute and pre-recorded electronics.
Purples.
I can't even say this. The line of purples for flute and pre-recorded electronics. You can't make this up. That's the name of the piece.
He could have just said fixed media, but and the Roger Zahab piece is called Suspicion of Nakedness.
Honestly, though, it's sad, but I almost understand with saying and pre-recorded electronics because 95% of people I tell fixed media, they don't understand.
People don't know what it means.
Flute and fixed media. And besides, normally when you say fixed media, it's just a tape piece. So fixed media would not be appropriate.
That's you say flute and there's a
it's like flute and solo tape.
Well,
it's like
and I don't think the for flute and such is necessarily part of the title. The instrumentation is just in all of them on here. I think.
Oh, it is.
To clarify.
Well, in that case, why is it called The Line of Purple? Never mind.
I actually like that. It's kind of enigmatic.
Move on.
But anyway, you can buy this at Bandcamp. It's not available for streaming at Bandcamp. There's only one track that you can preview, but it is on YouTube legally through Noxos. It's also available through Noxos if you prefer to listen there.
It might be available on iTunes. I'm checking right now.
But yeah, you can find this basically. So yes, check out this album. In other news, this month a little more like recent current. Navona Records just put out their June releases. This is a record label that I was not familiar with before now, but they actually release several albums at the same time every month. They just kind of have their monthly output. And it's a classic music label. It's and the Lindsay Goodman album, it came out last month, but was also on this label, which is an imprint of Parma Records. Which is a little broader than just classical music. But Parma collaborates with SCI. They do things together, so it's a good label to know. Navona Records released about like 10 albums this month. I'm not going to name them all. I'm not going to go through every single one of them.
It's actually cheapest on iTunes, by the way.
It is?
That last album.
Well, iTunes or the digital album on Bandcamp for the same price.
Oh, they are? Okay. Yeah. Well, there you go. So
we're still talking about the Lindsay Goodman. But, yeah, no, the Navona Records label doesn't just do contemporary music. There's some older repertoire too, but it is largely, a lot of it is contemporary music. So go and check out Navona Records. They really, like I said, they release music every month, so it's a good place to go if you want to see what's going on in the contemporary classical music world. So yeah, and other than that, we don't have a lot.
There's one more good bit of news. And it's Dorico related.
Yes, the Dorico.
Yes. So, actually, really quick, I'm trying to add this to my... All right, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Dorico Steinberg has released this little number for us. Dorico 2 trial. Free trial for 30 days, no restrictions. So it's not like the thing where it's like, oh, you can do everything, but you can't save, or oh, you can't print, you can't do anything. Full use for 30 days, which means I can get my hands on it in 20 days. I'm so excited. Actually, no, 14 days. It's 16 days. Because not this Friday, but the Friday after. Yeah, 2 weeks from Friday, I can get my hands on it, just due to how money lines up. Money, then I'll be able to just use it for the trial, and then just take a week off from composing, which I'll probably want to do anyways, and then dive right back in.
Yeah.
It'll be great. It'll be lovely. I can't wait. It means I can finally give my full opinion on it, since I tend to test all the notation software as it comes out. But I'm really excited for this, and also not just for the Dorico Pro, but Dorico Elements, the kind of cheaper, more lightweight version too. So cheaper people that might not be sold on Dorico yet might be able to experiment with it and see just why Dorico is so superior. So yeah.
If I'm gonna get a free trial, I'm not going to download the free trial of the inferior version.
Well, yeah, but you would never pay for the full version.
I mean, if I decided to switch, I would.
Well, you should switch. You should have switched already. Why haven't you switched?
I actually, it really hasn't been a priority lately. When Dorico came out, I thought about trying it out. I've been spending so little time in notation software lately that I just
this
don't
would
think about
make
it
you
a lot.
compose faster. I can guarantee you. Like, you will drop your pencil and paper, and you'll want to just compose in there, and it'll be so
I
much
kind of
faster.
doubt it. I really enjoy pencil and paper. I think it
Sibelius
stimulates
sucks.
my creativity.
Sibelius sucks.
So it really hasn't been a priority for me lately, but I probably will. I mean, eventually, I'm sure I'll get around to comparing them. And free trial, yeah, it's a good opportunity if you don't know, if you want Dorico, you want to try it out. Yeah. So
this is there. It's good to use. I totally recommend it. I mean, I'll personally be diving in finally, about a month late in the end, but you know what? Better late than never, and I'll probably make a full review and all that. But yeah, that's exciting, and also it kind of shows their confidence in the software that they've immediately launched the free trial, because a lot of companies will delay a free trial because they want to make sure that all the bugs are worked out and that the loads can be handled.
Right.
But they're just like, we're confident. And also, this is what, a year and a half after the original Dorico?
Yeah, we're moving at a quick pace here. Yeah.
That's pretty good. Though honestly, version 2 always comes out fairly quick. Like, even whenever you're going into other media, like, for instance, video games. Second iteration of MMOs always comes out a couple years afterwards. It's literally the same MMO, just it's rebranded, and then it stays on that version for like until the end of time.
Yeah.
It's just because there's so much change between 1 and 2 that it needs to happen. And in this case, it's all good things. We went over those changes a couple weeks ago, but either way, go check it out. It's there for free. It's a good thing. It'll make you want to convert.
This is reminding me of those memes. Have you seen like the memes where it's like a fake news screen and it says something like Kim Jong Un announces Despotiko 2 or something? No, that
we don't talk about silly little
memes,
Korean
man. Memes.
Yeah, but we don't talk about the Koreans on here.
Just a meme, man.
We don't need them to target Oklahoma. Though they can't reach Oklahoma.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure even if the missiles could reach the United States.
Bad. Ooh.
So, yeah, that's all the news we have this week. One thing we've been wanting to talk about for a while, so good that we have a little time.
Actually, wait. Out of curiosity, hang on, no, before we talk about that, like,
yeah.
No, never mind. Let's talk about that. Never mind. It was a silly idea. Keep going.
If you have an idea, we can.
No.
Do the idea.
No, keep going.
Zach has something planned.
No,
you
keep
can
going.
see it in his eyes.
Keep going.
But anyway, this is something that I brought up and was meaning to talk about a couple weeks ago. What is acceptable when criticizing the music of other composers or colleagues, in private or in public, but particularly in a more public setting. This came up for me because there's a Facebook group that we're both in, and somebody, it's the orchestration online one, and somebody started making these comments that were disparaging of a particular composer. I think it was Fernieho or something, and
yeah,
and
not just the little things like I do, like the digs at Fernieho, or like the digs at Fidelio from Beethoven.
And a lot of people were like, "Come on, dude! Like, chill out. This isn't what the group is for, and that's not what the group is for. There was that. But this guy, as much as I wish that yes, we should use the orchestration group for what the orchestration group is for. But he asked at some point, a legitimate question that I think applies to us as composers and musicians in general more broadly. And he said something to this effect, like, what's up with this idea that we always have to be like, we can't be disrespectful to composers. He basically said, they're putting their music out there for us to listen to. So once you put your music out there, in some sense, you're opening yourself up for critique, which I agree with. I think that's absolutely true. But at the same time, we as composers, when another composer puts their music out there, that composer is also a colleague, someone in our field, and we don't. And it's generally considered bad form to go, riding on your colleague's back all the time. So I'll let you have the floor here. What's your take on this? What's acceptable when criticizing the music of other composers? Um, how best to approach that so that you feel free to express your artistic opinion without being um, unprofessional towards other people in your field?
I'm in public, right?
Now you are, yes.
No, I mean for the
Yeah, we're
art.
not talking about your private conversation with me or another friend. We're talking about something where,
Like not living room in public. I'm like, let's say at the library or something.
yeah,
Okay.
you're saying something that other, online or to a
Um.
group of people who aren't necessarily, your confidants. You're just saying this in a way that could be quoted somewhere else. And
Yeah.
hmm
There's a cat down there.
there is.
So I think okay. It's really hard to answer this because it's okay. So what I would say is that when you're approaching talking about something like this,
hmm
I think first of all, not shouting from the mountaintops, which is
hmm
something that I occasionally have to not nudge him on because he sometimes, while talking about a private matter like that, will escalate his voice because he gets excited. I think number one, no matter what, whether you're saying something positive or negative, you've got to kind of make sure that it's meant for the group that you're talking to. Number two, and this is the bit more broad one, no matter what you're saying, assume that you could get an immediate response from this person because like there was something that I was looking for and I just found it from Thomas Goss. He's the one in charge of orchestration
Right.
online, and I'll read to you this quote when talking about this Fernie Ho post that was starting to spout a fire within the group. Okay, so I'm getting a bit concerned here. Please assume whoever we are discussing at any time is part of this group and take it from there.
hmm
That's a good way to go about it because I mean honestly you don't know. Like for instance, if I'm in public and I've got six people there in front of me, one of them, let's just say Bob. Bob might be best friends with Fernie Ho when I'm talking about Fernie Ho behind his back, and then when I professionally meet Fernie Ho is not going to be nice to me. Fernie Ho is actually going to actively work
hmm
against me.
hmm
And it's not because people are malicious, it's just a subconscious thing. Like, for instance, there's lots of people that have done that to me. People that have, not necessarily said something bad in public, but said something in relative confidence, but due to mutual acquaintances and such, I
hmm
quickly was aware of.
hmm
And due to that, I have very colored opinions of these
hmm
particular people and because I know that they have no respect for me or my music, and people wonder why, but it's like that's why I don't respect them as
hmm
artists or musicians because they clearly have no respect at all. And one of the situations I'm talking about. I mean, I don't know. It's you just got to be really careful because you kind of lose an ally.
hmm
I mean, there are lots of situations where that you can't even think of. I mean, like you like to make fun of me for this, but I'm a big fan of the butterfly effect. Just the notion that a small action now, pressing my
hmm
right arrow key, touching my cat on the back of the head, any of that stuff can lead to kind of bigger and bigger events as you move forward.
hmm
And I take that into thought whenever I'm in a professional environment. I make sure that I don't say anything that I won't regret later.
hmm
And whenever I'm talking about it, I make sure that if there is something negative to be said, which, there are
Hmm.
sometimes negative things that need to be said, make sure that you do your best to, I hate to say this, but sugarcoat it. Do your absolute best to sugarcoat it. So,
Hmm.
like, for instance, if I attend Jacob's guitar recital
Hmm.
and he does I'm not gonna go up to everybody and say, "Yeah, Jacob, he's his guitar playing. It's not great." I'm gonna say, "Well, I think he picked some interesting literature.
Hmm.
I think that it was really hard. You could tell it was difficult for him, but I'm glad that he did it. I mean, and the way that
Hmm. Right.
the way I presented that, it was congratulatory,
Right.
but I still got the message
Hmm.
out that Jacob's guitar playing is subpar.
Hmm.
I'm and honestly, that's the way to do it. And sometimes the best way that I've found, uh, keep in mind this is also I'm at the end of my education, so I've had a lot of experience having to do this.
Hmm.
Sometimes the best way to show a negative thought about someone's music is to
Hmm.
not acknowledge it. There are a couple of people that I am in circles with that unfortunately, I have come to the point where I just ignore their music because I know I don't have anything good to say about it. And it's sad, but it's really the only way I can maintain a good level of professionalism, especially
Hmm.
since I'm in a weird position that I'm like both in charge of socializing the composers and I grade half of them on things. So it's like I'm in a weird scenario. So I have to be really careful. And with that, I just make sure that I can't
Hmm.
offend anyone. And sometimes that means I just remove myself. I don't attend that recital. I don't, make an appearance here on purpose just so that I don't have
Hmm.
something bad necessarily to say. And that might sound like a cop out,
I
but it sometimes is the best answer.
I tend to take the approach if it's in a just a personal context, a colleague, at here at my own university, um, I take this is something that our composition teacher has said. I've heard you express it there at times too, and it's my approach too. Find something good to say. Even if you didn't like it, there's usually something good you can say about a performance or
Actually,
about a composition. Um,
like, have you seen Friends?
the show, no, I haven't.
Okay.
I mean, I've seen a couple of clips. Yeah.
Well, you're familiar with the premise on Joey the actor. Like Joey is an actor. Like he.
No, but like,
Okay,
well,
well,
sure,
Joe.
sure.
Well, okay. So one of the characters there,
Hmm.
Joey, he is an actor, and he has a hilarious run in the first couple seasons of he
Hmm.
just keeps getting the worst gigs. Like it's not necessarily that he can't act, but it's just that he's performing on North Broadway. It's not
Hmm.
the greatest shows,
Right.
and they get to a point among the friends group where it's like, okay, no, no, this is so bad. Tell you what, you get lighting this time.
Hmm.
You talk about reactions, and then you talk about wow, and so I
Hmm.
anytime someone talks about bad music, I think about that, and it's like
Right.
there's always something you could
Hmm.
compliment and just
Hmm.
act enamored by, and
Hmm.
you kind of get the message across that you're not as interested in that person's art, but at the same time, you don't criticize them. And the way they do it with Joey, for instance, is
Hmm.
okay, the lighting was great. It's hard not to screw up lighting.
Hmm.
Oh man, your reactions were just top notch. I mean, it's hard not to
Hmm.
have reactions when you're acting.
Right. Right.
Just things like that. So I
Hmm.
mean, I just I don't know. Like, do you think that that's good advice?
I think so. No, I think in a personal context, there's a place for criticism. You know,
Oh yeah.
I will criticize things about music, and you will criticize things about mine because
Well, I like criticizing your music as a hobby.
we're friends, and we've got together with other composers and looked at each other's music too, and you don't want it to become just some love fest where you don't actually get anything out of the experience because everybody's afraid to say anything bad about the other person's music. But in that case, I try to take the approach. I've seen this done in classes. I think is and I think it's a good educational tactic too.
Yeah.
Say something you liked about it, and they say something about it
Oh, the
that
sandwich.
that could be better. I think it's a good tactic personally. I try to use it when I'm looking at somebody's work, um, because there usually is something to be commended, and things that are good should be commended, and I think it's a good approach because it kind of it does tell the person what they're doing well, something they should continue pursuing, but it also gives them that constructive criticism. Um,
which is unfortunately sometimes lacking.
yeah. So, um, were you gonna
No,
keep
no,
talking?
I'm
The
just
what
letting you talk right now.
where I kind of wanted to go with this also is, so that's more when it comes to your immediate colleagues. We as music students getting together with other people, in the School of Music or such and such like this. But the other kind of another thing that interests me about this is what about when for example you're a student like me or you, and you're talking about the music of a well-known professional composer, like I don't know, like John Adams or Arvo Pärt or whatever. Um, and let's say for this context, you know you're speaking publicly, so maybe you are on the internet. Um, that tends to be a place where people do their opinions. Do you think there's a
Oh no, man,
difference
what's
in
the
how
internet?
do you think there's a difference in how, for example, someone who's a student, or an emerging composer should approach criticizing the music of someone who's an example in their field? Is there do you make a distinction between punching up and punching down, so to speak, or do you kind of treat everybody as on the same playing field, because even if those people aren't in your immediate circles, they are fellow composers, they are in some sense your colleagues, and hopefully you get to the point at which you are in those
Right.
circles.
Okay.
Hmm.
So for this, I think there is both a spoken and unspoken hierarchy there.
Hmm.
Um, and yes, you do need to be ready to criticize. Like for instance,
Hmm.
uh, you need to be ready to criticize my music despite the fact that I'm a degree ahead of you.
Hmm.
However, it kind of comes with the notion of you have to realize kind of where that human is.
Hmm.
So, for instance, like if there's an undergrad who looks at, let's just say, my music or Chelsea's music
Hmm.
and says, "Oh, this is horribly done, da da da," all that stuff, like with the human in the room. Chelsea and I are doctoral students. In fact, we're ABD, and this is an undergrad. That's completely uncalled for, and that undergrad will suffer consequences, whether he wants to or not. I mean, that's
Hmm.
just how it goes, because that's just uncalled for.
Do you think you'd be more justified in saying that to the undergrad if he or she is in the room?
If it is, first of all, not quite that brutally. Second of all,
No,
no, and
yeah.
second of all,
Hmm.
um, not in the performance space, not in the rehearsal space. That's something more for catch them in the hallway afterwards. Maybe, next time you're at the library or something with them, maybe just bring up, be like, hey, this thing you did in measures 23 and 24, just so you know, it's never going to work. Here's a way that I've fixed it,
Hmm.
type thing. Like, because we have a responsibility. Like, anybody that is, like, this sounds like I'm being cocky, but I'm not, I promise. But anybody that's
Uh,
beneath you, academically speaking, you have a responsibility and a moral obligation to teach anytime it comes up. That's the way I view it. That's the way both of my primary composition mentors have
hmm.
taught me. And I think both Dr. Sharp and Dr. Lamb know what they're talking about.
Hmm.
And I think it's a good way to move forward. I mean, it's like, for instance, like I won't say a name, but there was one of our composition colleagues who he had a couple of notation issues recently, and I made sure to just pour it on. I was not harsh, but I just said you can do X Y Z A B C. Here's how you do it. Here's a direct reference. Here's a clip from a book about it. All that kind of stuff in the hopes of steering this human on the right track, and it did work.
Hmm.
And that was the right way to do it. The wrong way to do it would have been this is awful. Have you ever notated something before?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, they both get the point across, do they not? But the way that I approached it was much more collected. It was much more
Mm-hmm.
positive, and overall was not a negative experience for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is something that you have to keep in mind. Now, in reference to your punching up and punching down,
Yeah, yeah.
that is that's the trickier part. But
Mm-hmm.
in general, I think you should feel a bit more free about punching down because you do have that extra level or two of experience. However, that comes with a caveat of knowing that, I mean, not everybody progresses the same. And so if there is something that you are, like for instance, on guitar, you're probably the best person to go to in our composition studio. So if you were to punch
Mm-hmm.
down on somebody about guitar, you could probably feel a bit more free to throw those punches,
Well,
even with going up. But with punching up, regardless, I think you have to kind of pull the punches slightly, only because there's kind of that implied hierarchy.
I want to make a distinction here. When I talk about punching up and punching down, I'm talking about public criticism. When
Yeah,
I think
this is what I'm thinking of, public criticism.
I think that but you're kind of mixing in the idea of, you know, giving someone tips and giving someone pointers and
No,
construction and that
I'm
kind of
using
thing.
that as the
Hmm.
tool by which
But
to pull the punches.
I think they're kind of different things because generally speaking, there's a saying there's like a saying in humor, you want to punch up, you don't want to punch down. If you're making fun of people, or like you having your
We'll
social
never make fun.
criticism on, or you know, in humor, so it's criticizing those who are, you know, on, in whatever, I don't really believe in hierarchies, but are less well known than you, or less far along in their compositional journeys than you. um I think when it comes to public criticism, I think it's actually kind of better and more ethical to criticize, if I, for example, if I'm on the internet talking about music and we're talking about pieces we don't like. I think it's like way it's far better to criticize a piece by an established composer than to go ragging on another student. Because because if we're talking about public criticism and we're talking about something you were saying in public, then I'm, you know, if it's an established composer, I'm not like injuring that person's career, you know, by saying I don't like their piece. But let a good example. I mean, I've sort of been talking about this, but like if there's a thread, you know, on some Facebook, like what's your least favorite piece? You know, what's your least favorite piece of music? I feel like it would be bad form to to say, well, this piece by Zach, you know, not that any of one of your pieces would be anywhere close to my least favorite, but because that, or by another one of our colleagues, you know, because it's like, to me that's just bad form for because, you know, it's a fellow student, someone who's approximately, you know, in that scenario.
That's a
Whereas,
different.
yeah.
That's not really criticism though. That's
Hmm.
bashing. There's a fine
Yeah.
line between
Well, but even
criticism and bashing.
but even if it was, but even if it was like,
No,
let's
like keep
just
in mind,
say,
part of what I was saying is constructive criticism. Like,
hmm,
there's a reason why I
yeah,
mentioned the teaching aspect and kind of pulling the
hmm,
punches. That's how you give constructive criticism.
let's say, let's do a little more of a, I think maybe a better example. You know, you're in the, you know, the orchestration online group, or another similar group where you're talking shop, and people and you're talking about examples of good and bad orchestration for an educational purpose. You know, I wouldn't have a problem, you know, using, you know, using an established composer's work as an example of, I think this orchestration doesn't work here and here's why. I would I would have a problem taking, you know, one of my colleagues at OU's work and posting it and saying, here's this doesn't work, and here's why. Because I think of the punching up and punching down, you know, or sideways, as it were. Um, I feel like that would be kind of bad form to take a student work and criticize it in that way when I can use an established composer. Um, it seems to me that's a better option, as in that kind of critical context, which is different than if you're talking to somebody about their music and giving them constructive criticism one on one.
Okay. Well, even with that, I again, I think it's good to slightly, at least in the public face, respect the hierarchy. And again, it kind of comes from, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm old fashioned in that way. Maybe it's because I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a college town and I'm used to there being a permanent hierarchy in place. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that both my primary instructors have very much drilled into me of, well, there is a hierarchy, and yeah, it's a bit looser in the arts, but
Mm-hmm.
it is still there. I think it's important to keep in mind. I mean, I you need to be cautious with that, and also there's nothing wrong with if someone asks me, oh, what's one of your least favorite orchestration moments for flute and cello? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
if I know of an example from, I'll just say, just because I mentioned her a couple times today, Chelsea, if I think of an example from one of Chelsea's pieces, just to say, this is my friend's piece. I like the piece overall, but this
Mm-hmm.
is one of those spots where it's like, yeah, the orchestration it really falls apart for about 5 bars,
Mm-hmm.
and it's because they have the flute in this weird range and the cello's in a weird range,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that there's something very important there because first of all, you're uh, you're being honest, which being
Mm-hmm.
honest is a huge thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Second of all, it kind of brings a layer of, I guess, kind of general awareness to the forefront of you by criticizing this human. Honestly, you kind of also exposed other people to this human,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good thing. Now, finally, and I think this is potentially the most important,
Mm-hmm.
you don't hold someone who is not worthy, so to speak, up on a pedestal. Because an undergraduate or even a graduate student who receives no criticism just because, oh, it'll make him feel bad, they're going to
Mm-hmm.
come out of school feeling
Right.
like they're going to come out feeling hotter
Mm-hmm.
than sliced bread
Yeah.
because they've never received criticism. I mean, for all they know, their music is perfect.
But
I mean,
but do you give that criticism usually? Do you give that criticism to them personally or to other people? The way I see it, that's criticism, and I assume here we're talking about more public settings.
yeah, this
If
is
you're
more public.
you may be talking to a close friend. You say whatever you want about somebody's music. I don't care. But to me, if somebody's music needs to be criticized, and I know that person, that's something I want to bring up with them. I personally feel that when it comes to public criticism, if I know the person, um, in more of I mean, not just having met them, but know them in a more personal capacity, it seems to me to be kind of bad form to go around criticizing the music publicly, because I tend to try to abide by the rule, like, don't say stuff about people that you wouldn't say to their face. And if you can say
I
it to
wouldn't
their
say it to their
face,
face. That's the difference,
and
I
if you
guess.
and if you can say it to their face, obviously there's a matter of context. I'm not just gonna walk around being like, hey, by the way, we're talking about Star Wars or whatever, and by the way, I don't like this part in this one of your pieces. But if we're you know, but if we're talking about the piece and they're like, well, what did you think? Maybe you say, they're like, well, I really like this. I felt like this part was a little shaky with the orchestration. Um.
Yeah, but again, I mean, I guess I mean, in the public face, though, I mean, I
Mhm.
don't think there's a problem with saying, as long as it's a valid thing, as long as it's,
Mhm.
again, with a constructive side of
Mhm.
saying, hey, despite this piece's brilliance, there's this really weak 4-measure spot.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be there functionally, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just it falls a bit apart for a
And
couple
and
measures.
and I
There's
think
nothing really wrong
sorry.
with doing that, in my opinion, because again, you're being honest, and also, I mean, what are you gonna do down the road? Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
just say that. Let's say that for some reason you absolutely hate Service Please, my Service Bell piece.
Yeah.
This is your most hated piece of
Mm-hmm.
mine, but you've never told me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at what point
Yeah.
in life are you allowed to say, "Oh, yeah, my colleague Zach's Service Please is the worst piece I've ever heard"?
Well, I don't, I don't know if you ever say that. I mean,
No, but
I
people say it about Beethoven and them all the time.
mhm.
Like, I mean, at what stage? Like,
Well,
let's just say I win a Pulitzer. Let's
there's a
say
real
I get a big concert standing.
mhm.
Let's say I'm the next Dr. K in electronic
Mhm.
music or something.
Yeah.
At what point is it okay for you, Jacob Frost, to say, yeah, that Service Bell piece, Zach, you're an idiot? Not
I,
with that terminology, but you
yeah.
get the idea.
Well, like I said, I wouldn't say that.
No, you
But
get the
I don't
idea.
I think that there's a matter of context there that goes beyond, it goes beyond, what you've done in the composition world, just the fact that we're friends. Like
So you aren't going to be honest with me?
I'll be honest with you. But I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you now. If I don't like your piece, I'm going to say, I didn't really like it. That doesn't necessarily mean I think you're a bad composer. You know,
Well, yeah, but
but
like, at what point will you openly admit to the public when they ask you, "Hey, what's the worst electronic piece you've heard?" At what point will you openly admit that the Service Bell piece is the worst?
I
Like,
think
once I'm dead?
I think maybe at some point you just don't really answer that question. I mean, I like I said, I,
Yeah, but doesn't
I'm
that
not
hurt your
really sure.
integrity
I'm
a
not
little
really
bit?
well.
I mean, knowing that there's
Mhm.
this pile of shit, this pile of stink just out there that
Mhm.
has been accepted, and you are the
Mhm.
only one that knows that it is a critically flawed piece.
Mhm.
You owe it to society to let them know, yeah, this is a critically flawed piece. So, at what point from now until you no longer can, your death,
Mhm. Mhm.
is it okay for you to
I don't.
say Zach's Service
I
Bell
don't
piece
think.
is horrible?
I don't think I really owe it to society.
No, you do. Like, whenever they ask you the honest question, like, let's just say you have students
Mhm.
that ask you, "Oh, has anybody written bad pieces that involve something stupid like a service bell?" Like, that's an oddly specific question,
Right.
but you get the idea. I mean, like, how many years down the road is it no longer tacky, in your opinion, to say, "Yeah, Service Please by Zach Daniels, go check it out. You'll laugh your ass off."
I don't know. I don't have like a set answer to that
Well, I
question. Like
know.
I
So I
don't
mean,
think it's I don't and it may be that I just don't ever mention that piece because it's like, oh, we're friends and I'm not gonna go, ragging on his music to people. I
I'm
don't
not
know.
saying go ragging. I'm
Yeah.
just like, you can be
Or
the
bring
biggest advocate of my music
hmm
ever and think,
hmm
man, Service Please is a horrible piece.
But generally personally when it comes to any composer, even an established one, I I kind of try to err on the approach that, like, yeah, this person is, he might have won a Pulitzer and be way farther along in their career than me, but they are a fellow composer, and I want to treat that person like somebody who I could, meet and have a relationship someday. My approach tends to be like, for one, I I I don't want to go around saying this composer is bad,
Well, no,
because then I'm
you
making a
never say
judgment
that. Yeah.
on them. However, I don't think it's bad to critique a particular piece of theirs, as long as you do it respectfully. And as long as you don't pretend like you're the final authority on the quality of this work.
Right. So,
Like
and
if
with that in
John
mind,
uh,
I mean, just can you answer this? I mean, when can you
mhm.
criticize Service Please?
Like I said, I don't have like I
Just
haven't
approximate. Like,
mhm.
would it be cool if we're both at a place where we both have like a full-time gig? Like, let's just say you're at like
Mhm.
a, I don't know, I'm just gonna say that OKCU. You're at
Mhm.
OKCU teaching composition, and I'm like I'm up in Madison, Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
head of composition area up there. I mean, at that point, is it okay?
I I don't know. I think there's still contextual things there. As a teacher, is it your job to criticize the music of your colleagues, or do you present it to your students and then let them make their judgment? You know, is I think in that capacity you have to consider that you are an educator.
Yeah.
And and
Well, a lot of
I just
education is showing what doesn't work.
yeah.
I mean, that's especially in composition because there's no way to show, oh, this is the way to do it. However, these are ways that it worked and ways that it didn't. Some hilarious ways it did.
But I think like I said, there's more than one factor there. I generally with people I'm good friends with, I'm probably not gonna pull their music out as negative examples. I'm probably just not, because that doesn't feel like good form to me.
What
Like,
if? And I asked this because I asked this because I have two examples from two separate composers that are part of my notation class now as bad examples, but I have barred out the names. Is that bad form?
The fact because you barred out the names, I don't necessarily think so. I mean, there's the chance that somebody could like go find that piece.
Well, no, like I've barred out the title and all that. Like it's example number 3 and 7, I think, in my folder.
Right. But if you have a large enough chunk of the piece, and then like they happen to hear it someday,
I mean, a couple pages.
At that point, it's kind of like if it were in like there, or I think it's a matter of context too. I mean, if you're in the notation class, you're not really necessarily dealing with composers.
Well, let's talk about orchestration then. So I mean, what? Because honestly, I'm still constructing my orchestration syllabus right now, but I mean, I have been looking at contemporary examples.
Yeah.
None of them are from immediate colleagues. One of them is from a distant colleague of mine through SCI. And I have barred it out as usual, but I mean, that considered bad form. I mean, I'm using them as the example without calling them out.
There and there again, you have that, and then you have the distinction between saying this piece is bad and criticizing an aspect of the piece. I don't think, and my personal feelings are kind of maybe not the best example on this, because a lot of people are a lot more sensitive than I am about criticism. But I don't think I would be offended if you were teaching a class someday, for example, and there was a passage in one of my pieces you didn't think worked, and you said,
"You mean like a certain electric bass solo?"
and you pulled it out in class, and not necessarily just rag on the piece, but like let's look at this piece. This is by a colleague of mine. I've never really felt that it works. Let's look at it. I don't think I'd be offended. I mean, maybe somebody else would be. Is the thing. Like probably a lot of people would. And which is one of the reasons I kind of think punching up tends to be better. For one, I don't really believe in hierarchies. I mean, I believe that they exist in the sense that there is a social hierarchy, but I don't really. I tend to be of the opinion that if a good criticism is valid, whoever it comes from.
No, it is. And I'm just saying that. I mean, again, I'm not saying, oh, that person is 2 tiers higher than you on the ladder, therefore you can never offend them. All I'm saying is that you do have to keep that in mind and perhaps pull your punches slightly, if only to show respect, really, for the fact that, hey, this human is further than me. This human has X years more experience than me. Because, I mean, I don't like, I'll be perfectly honest with the Fernio thing. I don't like 95% of his music. 95% of it I don't. There's about 5% and it's not even individual pieces. It's like, oh, that's a really cool moment. Things like that where it's cool. But, I mean, I'm not just going to outright claim, oh, well, I don't like Fernio.
Mhm.
I mean, I might think that, but I'm never going to actually
Yeah.
claim that because that human is significantly further along in their career
Mhm.
than me, and they have earned that
Mhm.
respect. Kind of like, I feel that, you earn your first bit of respect once you have your first non
Mhm.
university based premiere. And then after that, you have your next one whenever you have, your undergraduate done in composition or similar
Mhm.
arts. Then after that, you have another one with masters, and then after that, I'd say typically what happens next is some form of conference that you're involved in. And then after
Mhm.
that, being ABD. After that, being done
Mhm.
with that, and then you've got other ones as far as a string of premieres, having an
Mhm.
actual string, so like a month where you have, I'll say, 4 premieres in it is what I typically call a string of premieres.
Mhm.
Having international premiere, that's another like social thing. And so it's not really
Mhm.
a hierarchy, it's more like how many of these
Mhm.
medals do you
Yeah.
have on your jacket to
And
show?
see,
And because, like, for instance, like if Fernie Ho had just written these pieces to be outlandish and gotten these premieres from it,
yeah.
he wouldn't have quite as much respect for me. But the fact that he has the education
Mhm.
also adds those extra little medals to him.
Mhm.
It's kind of like, military uniforms. You
Mhm.
get extra bars for each thing that you're involved in, each thing that you're in charge of, that type of thing.
Mhm.
And it's kind of just a thing of, oh, this person has more bars than me.
Mhm.
They're in charge of the room. That's typically what
Mhm.
happens. And I think it's kind of a similar thing, compositionally speaking. It's not necessarily, oh, this person is X years further ahead, but generally years, like every 10 years or so, adds another one of those supposed bars.
Mhm.
So that's what I mean by a hierarchy. It's not
Right.
necessarily, oh, a doctoral student is automatically better than an undergrad, because
Right.
the undergrad could have 8 international
There
premieres.
there's lo- and there's lots of there's plenty of undergrads out there who write better music than a lot of professional composers.
Well,
The,
it's because
I
some professional composers aren't
Mhm.
actually good composers.
Well, but see that's my thing. This is why I when I say I don't believe in the hierarchy, it's not that I don't believe it exists in a social sense, but it's something I think that honestly I think needs to be subverted. I tend to think about I tend to think about it like the way I see it. You're only as good as what you know and the music you write. And my reason for respecting somebody who's an established composer but whose music I don't really think is that good is not really to me it's not well because they're higher on the hierarchy than me. It's because well they're a human being, so they deserve my respect just for that. They're
Yeah.
somebody in my field, so they deserve my respect as a fellow composer, whether I think their music is good or not. And as a composer, I feel that I feel that you have to be careful. It's not really your job, even though I think constructive criticism is important, to go around criticizing your colleagues all the time, because at a point it becomes, well, you're just trying to raise yourself up by putting other people down. Whereas your music should speak for itself.
Well,
I
it should be
Yeah.
okay. So
Mhm.
keeping in mind that liking a piece of music, liking a piece of art
Mhm.
is, 95% subjective, I would say.
Mhm.
There's like 5% object in there of just like, does it work type thing.
Mhm.
But 95% subjective. Um, with that in mind, I mean, let's just say you walk into a room, and actually, I'll use the example that I did to
Mhm.
explain, why undergrads tend to act the way
Mhm.
they do around certain students. With you and Nikki, if they walk into a space with me, you, and Nikki in a room
Mhm.
with a composition related question, knowing only where each of us are
Yeah.
in our
Mhm.
tracks and all that,
Mhm.
and nothing else,
Mhm.
and mainly because it would just really weigh it towards me anyways in this case, but like excluding all external premieres, excluding all of everything, they would default to listening to the
Mhm.
advice that I gave, only because I have those
Mhm.
extra
If
little years
if
behind me
if
that you
that's
guys don't
if
yet.
that's all the information you have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that's why I'm saying, I mean, it is, and
Mhm.
again, it's not worth everything,
Yeah.
but it is worth, I mean, that proves just in the human psyche that it is worth something. Like your years
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
experience, kind of the hours to mastery,
Mhm.
as it were.
Mhm.
And it just kind of shows that, I mean, yeah, you do have this hierarchy, and you do need to respect it whenever you're giving criticism. But whenever you're thinking about their overall experience, you have to think about,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm criticizing this human, but I have 0 world premieres, and they have 8
Mm-hmm.
international premieres last year. So you should probably consider pulling your punches slightly, only because, I mean, they're kind of in a different league from you. Whether you accept it or not, I mean, they're objectively in a different league than you at that point. Now, in a year's time, you might be a colleague of theirs,
Mm-hmm.
for all you know. And it's good to think of it that way, but I mean, you do need to kind of show that respect,
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't show that respect that they've earned, in all honesty, then
Mm-hmm.
whenever you reach that point and
Mm-hmm.
you see some little, I'll just say, pissant down there sitting there and screaming at you like,
Mm-hmm.
"Your cello writing sucks."
Mm-hmm.
You're a sophomore and undergraduate, sir.
I
I
I
mean, at that point, it's like, I mean, yeah, that it's just like you'll see kind of how pointless it
mm-hmm.
is.
But I mean, but I don't know. To me, you know, I
I'm
tend
not
to
trying to take the
be
high and mighty route, by the way.
right. I know. I I'm let me put it this way. I'm very leery of the idea that your public support or recognition should have very much bearing on how I view you.
Well, I'm not
Which
saying on how you view, on how
mhm,
you address me with
mhm.
criticism.
And personally, the way I see it, tempering criticism of someone in my field is not something I do so much just because I'd better respect the fact that that person has a bunch more premieres than me. It's that person is in my field, so so I should treat them with respect, however well known they are, and not because I don't I who am I to say that so and so who's won a Pulitzer and has all these premieres that this part of his music isn't good. I don't think that's a helpful way to think. I think that whoever you are, your music is open for criticism. I think it more in the sense that you're another composer in my field. I'm going to respect you. I'm not I'm when I if I
Right.
criticize something about you, it's going to be stated respectfully and not as a criticism of you, but as a comment on this particular piece. And I try to treat everyone that way, whether it's somebody I some other student I run across at a conference, or whether it's Eric Whitaker or Stacey Garrett. you know, I'm I I just I very much tend to not absolutely, but I tend to buy the notion that it's like you treat people with respect, whoever they are.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you necessarily treat someone with more respect because they have more credentials. And when we talk about credentials, it's
Everything,
academic,
yeah.
and all these
Academic,
things that
professional, all that stuff. Yeah, yeah.
all these things that add up. And this might also be a difference between me and you, and how much of music we think is subjective. I I I don't think I would quibble with what you said earlier about, well, liking a piece is 95. Well, liking a piece is 100% subjective, because
No, I
say
didn't say
I
liking a
like
piece. I'm just saying
yeah.
music itself is
hmm
95%
and
subjective.
I don't really agree with that. I don't know that it's something you can assign percentages to, but but
Yeah, because think about it. A lot of music
mhm
is, hey, we need a crescendo from second
mhm
4 to second 12. If you accomplish that crescendo,
mhm
you've accomplished something. How much of that something is up for
see,
debate?
I just don't. I like the way I try to evaluate art and music and art in general, and we're about to run out of time here. But it's
We are out of time.
when you write something, you're in essence creating a kind of creating a world, creating a universe in some medium. And I tend to try to evaluate music the same way I'd evaluate a book or a movie, and such as, have you done something interesting with this universe? Is the way you've done it, is the way you've done it consistent? You know, does everything make sense with what you've done? And
Yeah, but
I think I don't think it's a really a percentage thing. I think that there is an objective basis to how good or bad music is. And I think that we have to, as composers and as in some sense critics, acknowledge our own insufficiency. That even however much you try to be fair and balanced and objective in your criticism of a piece, we're only human, and you're never going to be objective on everything, and music resists systemization, and you can't be, you know, completely objective. But to me, I think that that calls for humility, um, but it doesn't call for timidity, if you know what I mean.
yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
okay. So I'll wrap it up by saying this because we are definitely past time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think that the core difference is that, I mean, yeah, we both admit that, yeah, you should kind of pull your punches at least a little bit. You shouldn't just lay someone out.
Mm-hmm.
But I had the caveat of, to quote the Thinker from the Flash TV series, I am, after all, first and foremost a teacher, and that's the way I approach it. I would
Mm-hmm.
rather help educate them and become the bad
Right.
guy than
Mm-hmm.
not help them progress. Like, I would rather
Yeah.
see the human progress. Like, I would rather, for instance, put our friendship in turmoil by telling you, Jacob, that piece, it objectively does not work for X,
Mm-hmm.
Y, Z. You really need to fix it. I've seen this mistake a lot.
Uh-huh.
Even if that were to, put our friendship on the rocks for a bit, I would
Mm-hmm.
rather tell you that and have that information there for you to consult
Mm-hmm.
than to not tell you at all and let you go around thinking, man, this string trio is the best thing since sliced bread. But anyways, with that aside, I think that, would you agree that that's probably the biggest difference? Is just I add a bit more emphasis on, I would rather ensure that they're being taught.
I don't think that's the biggest difference in what we discussed at all. I'm
No,
not sure how you got that out of
I
out
do,
of what
just
we
because
talked
that's
about.
why. No, because that's the mentality that drove what I was saying.
I I kind of come from the same perspective on it, like that if you have knowledge that can help somebody, that you should help them. But I mean,
I
I
guess I'm
just
just
think
more open to criticizing people.
I just I don't know how you got that out of what we talk about.
That seems to be the difference. Maybe I was wrong. Either way, let us know how you guys think of this. How much criticism of other composers is acceptable? How is it best to address it? Should you address it? Is some place like Orchestration Online really the place for it?
Well, or any group on
Any
there
of
or
that. And
something.
then what was the other thing you wanted to?
I don't remember. Just
There was
we're out of
something.
time. Hmm?
Was it one of the first things you said?
What?
I don't know. It was one of these. You said something else about letting us know about something. Oh, your electronic thing.
Oh, some electronic. Yeah. But anyway, send us your hate mail. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.
These.
Adios.
Oh yeah, June 13th, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yes.